Buying tickets to sports and concerts can be complicated, but there is a better way to buy with SeatGeek. SeatGeek is the smartest, easiest way to get tickets to every type of live event. And right now, get $20 off your first purchase. Just download the SeatGeek app and enter promo code WINGO today.
This is the Best of Golic and Wingo podcast.
Week 2, Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio and ESPN2, presented by Progressive Insurance. All phone guests join us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance line. Now, after we're done, Dan Le Batard Show Stugotz comes up on ESPN Radio. And obviously, it's been a rough year for a lot of reasons for the NFL.
Sure.
We've had the anthem protests. We've had some big hits, a lot of suspensions. And I think there's been 9 or 10 suspensions. Well, 9 now that the George Iloka suspension was reduced to a fine, but we've had a ton of suspensions in the year. We had, the Mike Evans hit on Marshawn Lattimore in Week 9. We had the fight with Aqib Talib and Michael Crabtree. We had all kinds of stuff going on in the Monday night game between the Steelers and the Bengals, the Rob Gronkowski play last Sunday on Tre'Davious White. So there's been a lot of bad optics in the NFL. And Dan Le Batard on his show basically said that he thinks going back to 2006, and the reason I think he used 2006 was that was the year Commissioner Goodell sort of began his commissionership, or maybe he just took that out of
right
for whatever. He thinks that he doesn't see the NFL, if you listen to the sound, in a better place now than it was a few years ago.
Is the league better than it was 6 years ago? Yes or no?
Yes.
No.
You don't think the league's in a better place 6 years from the day he took over?
No,
you don't think there's more revenues coming in?
The league is not in a better place today than it was 6 years ago. How can you argue that it's in a better place today? It was at the height of its power 6 years ago without the scandals, without the concussions, without the violence, without any of the issues. It was just money, glory, purity, without the anthem protests. I don't believe that you can argue that Roger Goodell deserves a pay raise based on him doing his job in a way that leaves the league better off than when he started doing it.
Well, that was 6 years ago. He's talking about 6 years, not 2006. I'm sorry, I got that confused. But he's basically saying, is the league better off now than it was 6 years ago? And to his point, he didn't think it was because of all the things that are going on. Now, the point Stugotz was saying is the valid counterpoint to that is, yes, but look at all the money that the NFL is making and the revenue that the owners are bringing in.
A couple of things. First, I'm so tired of people worrying about what Roger Goodell made or person X made. Seriously, Dan? I mean, to say overpay, if somebody offered you $40 million a year, would you sign it? I mean, I'm amazed. You want to be mad at anybody, go ahead and be mad at the owners for giving them the deal. But, I mean, they worked out that deal, and he signed it. I'm amazed at this. I was amazed at people complaining about, as I said, the basketball players you didn't know the name of that all of a sudden was making $14 million a year. So what? The money is there. The league can afford to pay those players that, and the players are getting it. The owners agreed to pay Roger Goodell all that money. So what? I mean, so what? The is he worth it or not argument is a ridiculous argument. You're worth what somebody is willing to take your signature for. So I just think that's a ridiculous argument. And as far as what the league is better or worse from 6 years ago, that's subjective. 6 years ago, the league made $8.5 billion. They made $14 billion last year. Better or worse?
Well, obviously, that's more money. Yeah.
So I guess it's all about what you're looking at. From scandals and PR and black eye to the public, it's absolutely not in as good a spot. Completely agree with Dan on that. So what are you looking at? The league financially is way better off than 6 years ago. Quite honestly, that may be the only thing the owners care about. And players, by the way, they make $8.5 billion to $14 billion. When you're splitting the pie the way you're splitting it, is more money to the players. So more revenue, owners are happy, players are happy. League to them is in a good place. from the public perception, as I said, Dan is right. With all the things that are going on, the game is going through the change with safety, and I get, so it's changing on the field, which is turning some people off away from some of the hits. Obviously, the anthem protest, and we've seen fights on a field before.
No question.
We've seen guys get thrown out before. Guys are getting thrown out at a higher rate now because they're cracking down more. So, yes, from the optics of how the league looks 6 years ago, it's different. Some of the off-field issues that are going on, it looks different. So in that case, I agree with Dan. It's not as in good a spot PR-wise. Financially, you can't even make the comparison that it's not. It's way better, in way better shape than it was 6 years ago. So like a lot of things, it's how you look at it. What do you deem successful?
Right.
What do you deem better?
All right, so then that becomes the bigger question over the long play. What's the long play in terms of the NFL? Is it better because they're making more money, or is there concerns because of all the cracks we're seeing in some of the foundations?
Well, here's the long play as far that I see from the business standpoint is they made the 14 bill. Will that go down? Because ratings are down. Now, and we keep saying their ratings are down. All the other sports would even hope to have the down ratings of the NFL.
Absolutely.
So I get that. But you know what you don't look at? You don't look at that. You look at your own sport and you say, okay, we've had this. We've been used to it. We've got up to this amount of money. We've got up to this ratings. And now our ratings have gone down. Is our money going to go down? Well, we have to fix that. We have to fix that. And they do. They have had some bad PR moves. There is no doubt about that. So a lot of it is what the public thinks of you, because they're the ones that are going to buy the tickets. They're the ones that are going to buy the merchandise. And maybe even more importantly, the advertisers, while are spending millions and millions, and TV networks are spending billions and billions on your product. If you put yourself in a position where an advertiser can come to you and say, you know what? Nah, the product's not what it was. Ratings are down. Next time we get to negotiate this, we're not giving you as much. And the next time TV deals are up, the networks can look at the league and say, you know what? Ratings are down. We can't give you as much. So from that aspect, because let's be honest, it all revolves back around money.
It does.
So that's what the NFL, they're going to have to see. There are a dip in ratings, no doubt about it. Is that going to have effect on the bottom line? You think it will. It's going to be a matter of how much and then what they need to do to try and get that back again, to work through the domestic violence and the punishments and what's going on, the kneeling for the anthem and the protests and the way the game is changing and the animosity toward the players and the league. There are definitely, and these aren't small things to overcome. These are not bigger things to overcome.
Well, Mark Cuban sort of touched on this. He's sort of weighed in talking about the NBA versus the NFL. He said, quote, our demographic is getting younger. The NFL and baseball, they keep getting older. And I think what we're doing with the video game, NBA 2K, is brilliant. And in the bigger scheme of things, in terms of building fans for the future, what do you want your kids to play? I mean, of all the sports out there, do you want to go to a baseball game? Do you want to watch your kid play basketball? Do you want to worry about him a whole football game, or do you want to watch your kid play basketball? So, I mean, that's sort of the way that Mark Cuban is sort of propping up his situation.
And his sport is flourishing right now. Let's be honest.
I think our ratings on the NBA are up 24 to 30%.
Let's be honest. All the sports, the major sports that we cover, if you want to include hockey, we've kind of put that out of the major four. But baseball, basketball, and football, Trey, they're flush with money, right? I mean, look at the contracts that are going on. Look at them, and now you hear some teams or whatever losing money. You look at it how you want it. Where are you losing it? Where are you gaining it? But they're all seem to be flush. The NBA, without question, is becoming way more popular. It's had tons of money relative to, especially to the amount of players they have on the squad of 15, as opposed to 53, and that had another 10 with the practice squad. I mean, it's in a fantastic place now, and it is popular right now. And we'd be fools not to understand that video games are part of it. Madden, how popular is Madden and the NBA games? And these things are so popular right now. And he's right about the younger crowd. What do they say in the stadiums for baseball? The average, I think the average age was 56.
Right.
So, you do have to kind of try and bring it down. But I'll say again, as far as the league, certainly worse in some aspects, better in some aspects. It depends on which one you want to look at.
And again, what you think the long play is for the sport. Right. I will say this, people are talking about the ratings being down. I can promise you that the NFL is going to get more money in their next deal than they did in the last deal for a couple of reasons. One,
different avenues, right?
Yeah, there's competitor. If someone's going to drop it, someone's going to pick it up,
right?
Because that still is the surest bet on television. Mm-hmm. It is the surest bet on television.
You're still getting good ratings.
It's an NFL game, and the other thing is they have other rights to sell.
Yeah,
the digital streaming rights.
Right.
But they've been experimenting with Twitter and Amazon and Yahoo and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Someone's going to want to come in and say, give me that.
You're
so
right.
as all we talk about all this other stuff, the dollar the next time around are still probably going to go up, and maybe by a significant margin for the NFL in their next negotiating right.
Golic and Wingo, the podcast.
Mm-hmm. Trey Wingo and Mike Golic Sr. And this is how we do it on a Friday morning. Glad you're with us. Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio and ESPN2, presented by Progressive Insurance. All phone guests, like Peter King in a few minutes, will join us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Mike, you know what I'm confused about?
What's that?
Bitcoin.
Bitcoins.
Yeah. You get that at all?
I wish I was involved.
I wish I'd bought them a long time ago.
Yeah, how about it?
They're up to like 16,600.
Yeah.
I don't, Bitcoin. Yeah. To me, it's like war. Wins above replacement. It's all mythical and magical.
You don't understand it, yet it leads to some people making a whole lot of money, which makes us want to be involved.
Not us.
So maybe we should have paid a little more attention at some point, huh?
Stanzik's laughing at us. I think Stanzik is like a Bitcoin genius, right? I think he's one of those guys that's probably soaking it in.
I don't know if anybody understands Bitcoin, yet people are getting rich off it. It's really amazing. I guess I'm just saying that because we don't.
All I know is that we're not getting rich
off it. Well, one thing
I
will say, when we talk about Cliff playing the music coming back at different points of the show, that he's playing a lot of our era music at times, and both Trey and I are in our 50s. Justin tweets in, with all due respect, I'm about half your age and have known every song played when coming back from commercial break. Yeah. My parents raised me right.
There you go.
Love that. Was that Justin?
Justin, you're in the club.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
You're in the club.
Been good tunes. And then, you may not be so happy now.
Why is that?
Vinny took a shot at you. Vinny took a shot. You're wearing kind of like a athletic.
It's a Johnny O type of a
zip, pullover type thing.
Yeah.
And Vinny says, "What's up with Wingo and the way he's dressing? He looks like a backup goalie for an indoor soccer team. He won't even let you be the starting goalie."
Well, I think that's probably a wise choice.
Yeah.
I think I'm dressing to the height of my athletic prowess.
Did he hit you? Did he hit the nail on the head?
I think I probably would be a very good backup goalie for an indoor soccer team.
If you tried your hardest in sports in your life, you think the highest you would have hit is a backup goalie on an indoor soccer team?
Maybe third string. Maybe the guy they call when the first two are down, and they say, look, we won't play you, but we need someone on the bench just in case all hell breaks loose.
Are you the guy that wears the sweats and underneath you don't really have your uniform on?
Oh, no, I got
Coach, I don't have my uniform. Go on in, Wingo. Coach, I don't have my uniform on.
Got to keep the zip on, Coach. I got a deal I'm working with here. So, Vinny, you're right. I mean, you're right. I'm dressing for what I am athletically.
There you go.
And we're glad we got that cleared up. And by the way, Justin, you're in the club. And Cliff, by the way, is the decider of who gets in the club.
That's very true.
All right, we got Peter King coming up in a few minutes, but let's do what we do sometimes off the top of the hour with...
It's time for... Off the Top.
Whether you like it or not, it's just beginning.
With Golic and Wingo.
All right, we start off the top with a change at the top of the front office for the Cleveland Browns. Former Chiefs general manager John Dorsey has been named the new GM of the Browns and will be introduced at a news conference today.
Going to be interesting, and again, we'll ask Peter King about this. Is the Rooney Rule, which not only affects coaches but management position as well, to interview minorities for the job. And Cleveland has said they have satisfied this. Now, is it that Sashi Brown was a VP, not a GM? Can they get her out? We don't know what their explanation is for that, but they certainly had their eye. And as many people would ask, why are you firing a guy right now? You're firing a guy now because you know he's not going to be there at the end of the year, and there are other teams out there looking for people in the same position you want, i.e., in this case, the Giants, and in different years, it's different teams. So you want to try and get your guy, and they've obviously had their eye on John Dorsey. John Dorsey is the scout type of guy, where Cleveland had gone to the type of Moneyball thought process.
Right.
John Dorsey is really anything but the Moneyball type of process. So we'll see what he does with the rest of the management team there with the Browns.
Well, that's the thing. What does this mean for Paul DePodesta? And what does it mean for Hugh Jackson? Because they've already said Hugh's coming back next year. Well, if you're John Dorsey, don't you want to have your own guy?
Very tough.
Nothing against Hugh. I'm just saying, if I'm the GM, I want to put my fingerprints on this team. let me put my fingerprints on this team.
That's normally the way it goes. Yeah, the GM picks the coach.
All right, we'll see what happens going forward. Okay, we'll touch on that with Peter King when he joins us in just a few minutes. We continue.
Off the top.
Baker Mayfield doing that EGOT thing, Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, Tony.
Yes.
He is cleaning up. He won the Heisman. He's a Heisman Trophy frontrunner, which we think he's going to win in a landslide on Saturday. He won the Maxwell Award Thursday night for the Player of the Year, the Camp Award for the Player of the Year, and the Davey O'Brien Award for Best Quarterback.
Yeah, he's won them all. Obviously, as the playoffs going into that to worry about, and we'll watch that in a couple of weeks. But a lot of discussion then is going to be, where is he going to go in the draft? His name was not brought up with the other quarterbacks, the Josh Rosens, Josh Allens, and Sam Darnolds and Mason Rudolphs and those types. Now it's being brought up, and should it be? A lot of people are asking. And a tweet says he has the X factor, kind of like Wilson and Drew Brees, who didn't have the prototypical size. And to that point, Baker Mayfield's like 6'1". He's listed at 6'1", 220. Right. So we'll see what his actual numbers are when he gets to the combine. But he isn't a prototypical size. The big plus for Mayfield, he's got a lot of experience, and he seems to have that it factor, which I do think is. I said that about Deshaun Watson, who is very talented, obviously, in the pocket, outside of the pocket. But I thought he had that it factor as well. And it certainly seems Baker Mayfield has that, but the evaluation process will be very, very interesting going forward with Baker.
Yeah, he may be the most interesting guy of all the quarterbacks in the draft, where you see him falling because of the things you're talking about. And lastly, on
Off the top.
Little NBA news. The Nets have acquired Jahlil Okafor in a trade with the 76ers. Brooklyn has also landed guard Nick Stauskas and 29 second-rounder, while the Sixers get Trevor Booker.
Listen, he wanted out. He played just 2 games this year. He's the third choice in the 2015 draft. You see, it's Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. They are the stars of that team, and they are true, real stars. Okafor isn't finding a place on that team, so he's like, basically, let me go somewhere else, and somewhere else is the Nets. So you make that move, and now he's happy. He's going to go play and get to do his thing. But I like to keep this on the 76ers, because going back to Sam Hinkie and the plan that he had, and he's nowhere to be found anymore, but he's just going to watch from afar as his plan comes to fruition.
Yeah, listen, it's working out. By the way, Joel Embiid had the greatest line ever about Jahlil Okafor. It said, "I love you, and then I'm going to kick your ass 4 times a year when I play."
There you go.
So it's pretty straightforward. All right, and that was Off the Top, and we move on now, and we're delighted to be joined by Peter King of the Monday Morning Quarterback, who joins us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance line, taking synthetic motor oil performance to a whole new level. Make the switch to Pennzoil Synthetics today. And Peter, speaking of making the switch, the Browns have done that. They may have landed the right guy in GM John Dorsey, but are you concerned at all about the process and how quickly this came about, and whether or not the Rooney Rule is satisfied in the way it's supposed to be satisfied?
Well, the one thing we don't know yet, Trey, at least that I don't know yet, is how long this has been going on. I mean, has Jimmy and Dee Haslam, and whatever fact finders they have used, did they do 10 interviews, 2 interviews, 1.5 interviews? We just don't know yet. So, I mean, we'll find out today when Jimmy Haslam speaks what exactly he says about whether a minority candidate was involved here, and then we'll be able to make a judgment. I don't know that we can make a judgment right now.
Going forward with Dorsey and knowing the type of GM he is with the scout blood in his system, and knowing the direction Cleveland was going this year, we put the term Moneyball somewhere with it. Is that completely now done, do you think, or will there be a combination of, or do you think Dorsey basically cleaned some house in the management division? That's
a great question, Mike, and I think when I first heard that Dorsey was involved yesterday, the one thing I thought was, and I don't just mean you personally, but I mean the people of Cleveland, the classic football fans, the Mike Golick family, will really love this appointment, because that's what John Dorsey is about. The last time that I saw John Dorsey was in his office in Kansas City in a little building right next to Arrowhead Stadium where the Chiefs have their facility. And he was sitting in a dark room watching tape, and he took some time out to talk to me. And to me, that is John Dorsey. Okay, I'm going to talk to you, but I need to get back to my tape. And so he's a pleasant guy. He's a very, very smart football guy and a great judge of talent. And I think if Cleveland was going to pick somebody at this point, I just think he's a really good choice because you've got a football coach in Hugh Jackson who is old school football coach. And I think John Dorsey is an old school Ron Wolf trained football guy. And so that's why I think this is a better match than the previous one. Now, your question, Mike, about Paul DePodesta right now, that's my question too. And I asked the question to somebody there yesterday, and I got a we don't know yet back, and so we'll find out whether Paul DePodesta stays and whether he can have some role in this organization going forward.
Well, yeah, and then, the idea, Peter, as Peter King from the Monday Morning Quarterback joins us, that Jimmy Haslam has already said, hey, Hugh Jackson's coming back next year. It does seem like you'd sort of want the GM to sort of put the pieces together, and it seems like some of those pieces are being put together for him. Yeah, and I mean, look, at this point, I believe that Sashi Brown was the guy who picked these guys, and Paul DePodesta wasn't. Paul DePodesta was an advisor. He was not a string puller. And so I don't think I'm not going to really believe many people who say that DePodesta picked these guys because I don't think he did. But now I think it will be more of two guys on the same page, especially in a draft next year when you've got 5 picks in the first 2 rounds, and after bypassing so many capable quarterbacks, whether you like any of these guys a lot or not, you got to pick one of them. Yeah, Peter, whenever I go along these lines, I always go back to the old Bills general manager trying to sell the job. It's a good job, being the head coach of the Buffalo Bills. Could you make the argument now that they have a guy in Dorsey who, as you alluded to, is an old school guy who has a track record, and you look at the resources in terms of the upcoming draft that they have in 2018, an extra first rounder, 2 extra second rounders, 6 extra picks in total, lots of cap space. There actually might be real reason for optimism that this could be sort of the group that might be able to turn these picks into actual players, which has been the problem for the Browns the last few years. Yeah, well, we've said that, Trey, a lot, with a lot of different, coach/GM combinations. And, the only thing I would say about this one is that to me, I think it's more of a match between coach, and I don't even know how well or if these guys know each other well at all, but knowing both men, they fit each other pretty well, I think. And I'll just say one other thing. I was talking to Joe Thomas a couple of weeks ago, and I expected Joe Thomas to be fairly reserved in his praise because Joe Thomas, to me, he's one of the ultimate, really honest guys who's going to tell you exactly what he thinks. Joe Thomas loves Hugh Jackson. He loves the guy. He thinks that he is the guy, no matter what the record is, who can turn this team around, and the players are listening to him and doing what he says. So I definitely think that this group has a chance, and now we'll see if they can do it.
Talking to Peter King on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Overall, and going into next year in a kind of a reactionary mode, we've seen on the field more players getting tossed. We've seen what's gone on with Mike Evans and Gronkowski and the fight with Crabtree and Talib, and then certainly the hits by Smith and by George Iloka. So we've seen all the different things and others that have gone on the field. Now, Peter, there's all the talk now about should there be more defined games with action on the field? Should this mean 3 games to 5 games, a range? Then there's also talk of are they going to institute the targeting rule that's in college right now? All in a reactionary measure of this is what's going on, how do we react to it? How do you think the NFL reacts to what's going on the field as far as discipline coming up next year?
That is a great question, Mike, and I think it's on the mind of a lot of people around the league. I think it ranges from this was really one of Jerry Jones's flashpoints. and what really had him hot in the off season, and that is he thinks the NFL is way too suspension happy. A 1-game suspension in football is equivalent to a 5-game suspension in the NHL or NBA, or a 10-game suspension in Major League Baseball, and that the suspensions are given out too willy-nilly. Now, I think we're entering a very interesting point of NFL history, which is a time that more and more parents around the country are watching the NFL, and if they decide it's too violent, they're not going to let their kids play. And that's just the way life is right now, and the NFL has to respond to this. They don't have to be scared by it, and football is not going away, but I think they have to be cautious, and they have to be responsive to the fact of people who want to see JoJo Smith-Schuster standing over a guy who may be unconscious and laying on the ground and taunting him while one of his own teammates is laying in the hospital and he has no idea whether he's ever going to walk again. The optics of that, not to mention the idiocy of that, is pretty high, is pretty bad, I should say. So, the NFL obviously is going to be concerned, but I would agree. I think there needs to be a more well-defined and not so week-by-week approach to how players are suspended.
Yeah, Peter King with us on Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio and ESPN2. Peter, you alluded to it after the Monday night game with those hits on the Monday morning quarterback. What are you saying to parents who say, do we want our kids playing this game? And it is sort of Mike Mitchell had that epic rant that he went on after that game, and I think that was a little bit I don't want to say upsetting, but because these are rules that the NFL's tried to implement over 5 or 6 years now. I can remember, Peter, when they first put out Ray Anderson, who's now at Arizona State and has just poached Herm Edwards away from us. Thank you very much. Yeah. When he was head of the officials, put out that tape and said, "Look, this is a hit. This is a clean hit. This is not a hit, and this is a bad hit." And we had Channing Crowder saying, "Look, this is my helmet. If you give me my helmet," at that point, a linebacker for the Dolphins, saying, if I'm going to use it as a weapon, we're still, it's sort of a little unsettling that 6-7 years removed from that, we're still having to let people understand, no, that's not what that's for. That's something that's a protective piece of equipment,
right,
and we need to do things differently now.
Well, I think the one thing that players, and look, if I were a player and I accidentally, I was going to tackle somebody, he lowered his head and we went helmet to helmet. It's one of those things like with a baseball pitcher. When a ball absolutely seriously just slips and you hit a guy either in the helmet or wherever in the face, and it's a terrible thing and you didn't mean to do it, it doesn't matter. You still did it. And it's the exact same thing that the NFL is going to maintain. If you hit a defenseless player helmet to helmet, you are responsible for that. You're either going to get heavily fined or suspended. That's just the way the game is going, and I think for long-term efficacy, intelligence of the game, that's the way the game should be going.
Well, we'll see if that continues to be in that trend. Peter, as always, we appreciate you being with us. And we hear, by the way, you're a fan of the music of the show. So
I love the music of the show, Trey. I'm sure that you picked it out, didn't you?
No, it's all Cliff. That's all Cliff. But Peter, Enfield, Connecticut's own Peter
there
King,
you go.
by the way. Peter, thanks for being with us, my
Peter.
friend.
Thanks, guys.
Golic and Wingo, the podcast.
What a day, what a show, what a time.
I tell you what, a great sports night last night, no doubt about it.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hey everyone, Mike Golic here. Support for the Mike and Mike podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. Rocket Mortgage is simple, allowing you to fully understand all the details and be confident you're getting the right mortgage for you. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Mikes. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLS, consumeraccess.org number 3030.
Hey girl, have you done something new with your scales? Using new moisturizer? Nice. It really brings out the hazel in your eyes. Oh, hold on. Are you using whitening strips too? Your fangs look good, girl. Really good.
A really charming snake charmer? Surprising. What's not surprising? How much you could save by switching to Geico.
Wait, what? Have you been doing Pilates too?
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
All right, Trey, so you brought up Bitcoins before.
Yes, for no reason whatsoever, except that apparently I don't know what they are, and they're worth a lot of money.
Bitcoin is worth $16,000?
I think it's up to $16,600. It was at 17 at one point yesterday and fell
so
back.
It's gone down. Oh, no.
So you missed your chance.
How about this? Talk about getting in on the ground floor of things. That's something you'd all love to be able to hit something. You're on the ground floor before it becomes big, and then you have it, and all of a sudden it gets big, and wow, you're a millionaire. British singer Lily Allen, who, by the way, is a sister of Alfie Allen, who plays Theon on Game of Thrones.
Yes, or Reek, if you Rick from another episode.
There you go. This British singer reportedly turned down a singing gig about 7 years ago for which she was offered, for pay, hundreds of thousands of Bitcoins.
Okay, but at that point, they weren't actual money,
so you
right?
would have had to say, okay, I'll take a shot on these, pay me in those. She didn't. 200,000, by the way, today, 200,000 Bitcoins would be worth $1.5 billion. That's with a B. $billion. Oh.
Might want to rethink that one.
Obviously, you don't know, but that's those chances, Say, you know what? We'll see where this goes. Yeah, I'll take it in Bitcoins. Give it to me,
and just so people understand, that's 1,500 million millions. That's
I know you like that whole million things.
It's crazy.
It's confusing to me.
Well, that's the other thing. Like, there was some guy, I can't remember his name. He sold off like his 20% share in Apple for like $10,000 in the 70s. That would have been worth like $500 million.
Oh my gosh!
So, and that's look, I don't understand Bitcoins. If someone does, that's wonderful.
It would have been great to say, "Hey, Bitcoins are worth 16,000," and you go, "Oh man, you know what? I remember about 7 years ago, I did this gig. I think I got about 100,000.
Let me go look it up. Yeah,
somewhere.
You pull. Well, that's like that. That's that movie Holes that came out, and they found the box with all the AT&T shares in it and all that kind of stuff.
Okay,
you just stumble into $gazillion.
Wow, that's
good
fantastic.
For you. Well, you know what? Maybe she can make it. No, there's no way you're making it.
No, you're not making it. No, you're not.
You're just going to have to kiss that one goodbye. Mm-hmm. All right, we are Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio and ESPN2, presented by Progressive Insurance. Look, lots to get into football-wise. You want to do it now?
Yes, let's do it.
All right, Week 14, let's play.
This is 5 Point Stance on Golic and Wingo.
All right, we start the 5 Point Stance with the big showdown this weekend in L.A. Jared Goff, #1 overall pick in the 2016 draft. Carson Wentz, 2nd overall in 2016 draft. The 7th pair of quarterbacks in the common draft era to be taken 1-2 in the same year. It will be the 8th time in that era that those quarterbacks face off against each other. Although, Mike, let's be clear, they're actually not facing off against each other.
Yes, they are not facing off against one another. So they're facing off against other defenses. And in this case, you're going up against Goff is going up against a 3rd-ranked defense in the league in Philadelphia. So certainly a big test for him. He's been the bigger story, obviously. Carson Wentz, we saw him play well last year, and he's taken it to that next level. Goff, we were ready to kind of put aside, but we just love what they've done with the offensive line. Gurley even more involved in the passing game, and certainly and getting more weapons on the outside, and then Goff. I am so. This is one of the top games, obviously, this weekend to look forward to. It's only one game, but for Philadelphia, which really is battling Minnesota now, who plays Carolina. For that top spot in the conference. This is where you are now as the last quarter of that season goes. Are you a bad team looking to look at other players and just finish out the string? Are you fighting for that playoff spot, whether it's division or wild card, or are you trying to get the road through the Super Bowl to run through your building? And that's exactly where Philadelphia is.
Well, look, they're in real danger if they lose this game. They were 10-1, had a 9-game winning streak. They lost up in Seattle. If they drop another one, there's a real good chance that they could go from being the #1 seed to the 3 seed.
Yeah.
And so that would change things dramatically for them. By the way, according to the Elias Sports Bureau, Sunday's Eagles-Rams game will be the second matchup since the 1970 AFL-NFL merger between two teams averaging at least 30 points per game this late in the season, and the first since 1983 when Washington beat the Cowboys 31-10. And ironically, or interestingly, or coincidentally, however you want to put it, both teams are averaging the exact same number, 30.1 points per game.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
And Carson Wentz does a great job of escaping, and the Rams' defense is better at pass rushing than stopping the run. So it would really, and this isn't rocket science, for Philadelphia.
It's not Bitcoin science.
There you go. To get that running game going to help for that play action, because if that Ram D-line can just kind of pin their ears back, they're tough to block.
Yeah, and that was the issue in Seattle. They didn't quite get the running game going, and Seattle was able to get after Wentz, even though he made some great throws. All right, we continue on our 5-point stance. The Patriots can clinch their 9th straight AFC East title with a win or a Bills loss or tie, which will extend their NFL record for most consecutive division titles. A win would also clinch their 8th straight 11-win season, which would pass the Colts for the longest such streak in NFL history.
Listen, there's not a ton to talk about here. They're the best team in the AFC right now. Glass half full, you want to say about Gronk. He gets a week to rest.
Yeah.
Gronk's still obviously a great player who did a very dumb thing. He's going to sit a game. So for New England, they're doing what we give them credit for doing. We were surprised early on when they lost 2 games at home, but we're like, if a team can figure it out, it's the New England Patriots. And that's exactly what they're doing. So not really a lot to digest here.
And by the way, what's the common theme here? 8th straight 11-win season, which would pass the 2003 through 2009 Colts. What do those teams both have in common? Stability and excellence at quarterback.
Yep.
Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. By the way, 5-point stance brought to you by Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit us at geico.com or call 1-800-947-AUTO. We continue with our 5-point stance. The 1992 Chargers, as we have said, the only team in NFL history to make the playoffs after an 0-4 start. They finished 11-5 that year. But now the 2017 Chargers are now 6-6. Tied, and it's a 3-way tie right now for the AFC West lead after starting 0-4. According to the Football Power Index, the Chargers have a 38% chance of making the playoffs. They finish Washington, at Kansas City, at the Jets, home for Oakland.
Yeah, listen, this is the team where we talk about it's not where you start, it's where you finish when you're peaking at the right time. Phillip Rivers continuing to do his thing. Just 7 interceptions to go with the 21 touchdowns. Melvin Gordon showing the versatility, being able to stay on the field, but then showing the versatility that we thought he could, that we all thought he had coming into the league. And boy, Keenan Allen, he has really, really been something for them. So you give a lot of credit to this team. Just kind of. It's always the team, or they've always been that team. Rivers down late in the game, ball. Can he get this team to victory too? They've just watched the other team slide right back on down to them. So it's right there for them. So if you're a team like Oakland or Kansas City, you're like, hey, okay, no matter what happened, forget it. We're all 6-6. We all got a shot going forward. For the Chargers, it's like, hey, what we've done, remember it, because we're catching these teams that are falling back to us. So it's just a different vibe for each team in the way they're going.
And again, a huge showdown also not involving the Chargers in the AFC West as the Raiders and the Chiefs get it going. And remember, the Raiders have already beaten the Chiefs in that epic Thursday night comeback where they had, 3 chances to get it in on the final play because of all the penalties. So a huge game in the AFC West coming up. Continuing the 5-point stance, Case Keenum is second in the league in total QBR, 75.4 out of 100, which is the ESPN base metric, trailing only Deshaun Watson at 81.8, but obviously he hasn't played for a while. Keenum was last in the league with a 37.5 total QBR last season.
Now, listen, what he's doing, obviously it's been fantastic. He's making himself a ton of money right now, no question about that. And so this team now in a battle, as I said, with Philadelphia for the top spot in the conference, and a tough game for them. Was it Carolina, right?
Minnesota's at Carolina. Third straight road game.
So you're going against a defense. This is, I think, one of the smartest. You look at middle linebackers that run defenses and guys that have done it in a great way. You go back to obviously to the greats up on through, and today there are guys like Luke Kuechly who dissect the play. They pre-read just like quarterbacks do on the offense, and the way he's able to do that and put his players in the right position. I'm really looking forward to this matchup because of the weapons that Minnesota has on the outside with the receivers in Thielen and Diggs and Rudolph at tight end. Lost Dalvin Cook at the running back position, but I'm going to love this because the talent on that Carolina defense is certainly there, especially in the front seven. But the way Luke can break it down, that to me is a great matchup. The quarterback pre-snap read to get your team in the right position, and the linebacker pre-snap read to figure out what they're doing and get them in position. I'd say great. Watch Just watch before the play. Watch the quarterback talking. Watch Kuechly pointing and talking to everybody. It's just, this is when all the study during the week, when all the practice and all the game film, this is when it all comes to fruition, about 10 seconds to 5 seconds to 3 seconds before a play, and then 1 second after the ball is snapped until everything is declared.
Look, Teddy Bruschi says it all the time on NFL Live. If you take your eyes off the ball, you may learn something about football. And you're talking about that with Luke Kuechly. That's
exactly right.
Certainly the case. You can't overstate this enough. Case Keenum is really the third-string quarterback, or was the idea of being the third-string quarterback for Minnesota. And he's on an MVP pace. He really is. And yet every week he's just the starter for next week. So I mean, what does a guy have to do to get a little more solidarity backing? But he's been playing great. And we finish up our 5-point stance with our football power index. Gives the Browns a 40% chance of winning Sunday against the Packers. That's their best chance of winning the rest of the season. The Browns are 4-40 in their last 44 games.
For all that's going on, Trey, the Browns players actually got some good news in the last day.
Yeah.
You know what the good news was? They know who their coach is next year.
Correct.
There is something, because I've certainly been through this. We're coming to the end of the year. You know you're not going anywhere, and you don't know if the coach is going to be there. So, listen, I know most people just watch and you say, well, you're just supposed to go out there and play. Just go play. That's what you do. But, man, when guys' livelihoods are on the line, moving families, all that thought process is on the line, it can take on a different air. So, to me, there is something for the players, at least the comfort of knowing that head coach they're listening to, who's directing them and coaching them, he's going to be the guy that's coaching you, and most likely means the guy coaching your position, he's going to be there as well.
Right.
And that's who players deal with the most. It's not the head coach, it's the assistant coach, of which if you get a new head coach, you're going to get a new assistant coach. So there is that small level of stability that the players did get yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, it sounds weird that a 40% chance is their best chance, but that's sort of the way it is. They haven't won a game on Sunday in a couple of years. I mean, Hugh Jackson is 0 for September, October, and November in his career as the Browns head coach. They did have that win in December last season, but that was on a Thursday. By the way, according to the Elias Sports Bureau, a loss Sunday would give them the worst 45-game stretch in the history of the NFL. That would drop them to 4-41.
Golic and Wingo, the podcast.
It was all sort of one big giant Jell-O mold.
It's very interesting where that went.
We're finishing up our second week of the show, and we're sort of here. We're, as you and Junior like to say, water is finding its level. But when we started the show a week ago Monday, you know, we were very open honest. Look, we get it. It's a new thing.
Oh, yeah.
Mike and Mike were great for 18 years, and Mike's going to have his own show coming up later on in 2018, and we're going to be doing this, and everybody's going to be having their own fun, and it'll be a blast. But we understood it was a transition.
Right.
And we sort of made this joke. That, look, we have a swear jar. You know, you have a swear jar in the family. Every time you say something bad, you put money in, and then at the end you either donate it or you buy a prize for somebody or something like that. Exactly. So we made this joke that we had a Mike and Mike swear jar, that every time somebody said Mike and Mike instead of Golic and Wingo, we'd put money in the swear jar.
And we've been pretty good about it, right?
Very, very good.
Yeah.
Big fella, it's time for you to put some in the jar.
That's DollarShaveClub.com/Mike. Back after this, Mike and Mike.
You said Mike and Mike.
I mean, and I said it so just naturally.
Yeah, it was just rote behavior.
Because you kind of said it one time.
I almost said Mike and
but we caught ourselves. I almost said it one time and caught myself. That was just a natural Mike and Mike.
Look, it's like, what do we talk about with athletes and golfers? Muscle memory.
Yeah.
Okay, it's hard. Change is hard.
Wow.
So we understand.
That was something.
That was very, very good. So we have the initial swear jar.
There you go.
That's
it. Well, what are we saying every time? It's $1,000.
It's you know what? It's 10,000 bitcoins.
There you
go.
What it is. That's DollarShaveClub.com/Mike. Back after this, Mike and Mike.
You said Mike and Mike. In your defense, though, the promo code for that read was Mike. So does that make you feel better?
It was.
Does that make you feel better?
Yes, it was. So no, it doesn't.
Okay.
I
just trying for you.
Put money in the jar.
Putting money in the jar. We'll get 16,000 bitcoins in there, which will be worth $33 billion by the end of the day. Okay, we talked about this a little bit. The Sixers have had so many of those high draft picks. They got rid of one of them. The Nets have picked up Jahlil Okafor in a trade with the 76ers. Brooklyn also lands guard Nick Stauskas and a 2019 second-rounder, while the Sixers get forward Trevor Booker. Okafor was the number 3 choice of the 2015 draft, has played in just 2 games this season. Obviously one of the reasons why Joel Embiid has been a monster. Ben Simmons has done great. And Joel Embiid, who might represent the process more than anyone else, he's played in 31 games in his first 3 seasons, said he had some parting words for his former teammate.
Like everybody else, and texted him.
What did you say to him?
Man, I was just like, love you, new beginnings, love you, good luck, and then I made sure to let him know that I was going to kick his for the next. I don't know, we play them 4 times a year, so I made sure to let him know that, like, every year 4 times I'm going to kick his.
So that went very quickly from I love you to I am kicking your you-know-what 4 times a year.
Yeah, listen, and for Okafor, it's been interesting. As you mentioned, a number 3 overall pick. Team president Brian Colangelo said he reached a deal with a team he declined to name to trade Okafor last season until it fell apart at the last minute. That led, as you can imagine, to a pretty awkward situation after that where you think you're getting traded, then you're not, and then you got to go back to the team that tried to trade you. Okafor didn't even travel with the team during the trade deadline. He did lead the Sixers in scoring as a rookie with Embiid out with injuries. Okafor played 55 games last season, never really messed with Embiid. Oh, and then Okafor started piling up the did not plays, the DNPs. Those stretched into this season, and obviously life is going to go on without him. As Brett Brown, coach, said, he can now go play basketball again, which is true. He's going to get new life to go play ball there and kind of do his thing. But Embiid, I love Joel Embiid.
He's a national treasure already.
Absolutely.
Right? He's phenomenal.
Dude, he's that athlete of today, which is an athlete of today, big and can do anything. And then he is fantastic on social media. I mean, he just absolutely is. So there's nothing not to love about the guy.
By the way, did you see the picture of him next to Jose Altuve at the Sports Illustrated Person of the Year Awards? It was amazing that they're both dominant athletes in their chosen profession.
Really incredible.
And there's no way one could do what the other one is doing.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
It was hard to believe that those were 2 from the same species.
Yeah.
I mean, it was
2 of the best in their sports,
quite the contrast. But
Pretty
Embiid
wild.
is a lot of fun, and we'll see if Jahlil Okafor, as you said, can get it going for the Nets.
Golic and Wingo, the podcast.
Let's not expect too much. There's only one person out there that's expecting way too much out of this guy too early. We know who that is. It's his father.
You know who didn't have a lot of incomplete passes
Who's
or any
that?
incomplete games this year? Scott Frost is the head coach at UCF. And, of course, Scott Frost is moving on to his alma mater, the new Nebraska head coach. And he joins us now on Golic and Wingo. First of all, Scott, congratulations. It's been a great season for you, and obviously a crazy Saturday where you took the Nebraska job, and then you had that amazing title game about Memphis. That had to be sort of one of the most weird days you've had in a long time, but it literally came out as a win-win.
It was bittersweet. It really was. Having that championship with the guys was special. That's an unbelievable group of men down there that made that happen. And it was as difficult a thing as I've done to leave them, but then getting up here to my home and my alma mater and being greeted by a bunch of former players and family, it was a special day.
And we'll certainly get to that. Let's talk about the broad picture of the playoff situation right now. Here you do win all your games that are in front of you. You do all that you can do. And yet, even if it were an 8-team playoff, you guys would have been left out because you sit at number 12. Do you see it changing at all or how it can change? Because right now you're not in the Power 5. It's like you're hitting a glass ceiling and not getting past that.
Mike, I think, to be honest with you, I think the glass ceiling was put there intentionally. It was apparent to me that every single week the committee made a decision. We have to keep them at a certain place in the rankings so that we don't run into the trouble of having to move them up if people ahead of them lose. And every week a new 2-loss team or a new 3-loss team was moved ahead of us. I remember Iowa State getting moved ahead of us. Everybody thought they were great. They lost the next week. Then Washington State, all these people kept getting moved ahead with either 2 or 3 losses. Finally, they moved Stanford ahead of us, who must be better than UCF because they're a Power 5 team. Well, they lost to a Group of 5 team. So I think a lot of assumptions were made. And to answer your question, I really think it was an 8-team playoff we might be 6 or 7. UCF might be 6 or 7 because at that point the committee might say, okay, now that there's 8 teams, it's okay to have a group of 5 team in.
I completely agree. I've always said I think it should end up at an 8-team playoff, and that's the way a group of 5 team can get in, and I agree with you. I think it would have went that way. But, yeah, it's got to be so frustrating seeing these teams losing and passing you to boot. So does that put even more on your that final talk to the team in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl where you're playing against Auburn, a team that was 1 game away from being in the playoffs? Now, they're not going to be in the playoffs, but you do get a chance to prove yourself against one of the top teams in the country.
Listen, we haven't talked about it all year because I didn't want to be one of those coaches that started talking about it, then you lose the next game and you look like a fool. But we're there now, and we have a lot of other things to deal with. Our staff has to get back and make sure the players are okay, make sure they're okay with us coaching them, try to rally them to play one more game together. We're playing against a really good team, so we have a lot of things to worry about. But I do think there will be a little bit of a chip on the shoulder of some of the guys that feel like they may have been slighted a little this year.
Scott Frost with us as he is now making the transition from being an undefeated coach at UCF and getting them into a big bowl game in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl against Auburn, and now coaching his alma mater. It's always a discussion that comes up this time of the year, Scott, when coaches make that transition and make that change, and a lot of coaches and a lot of people feel like coaches don't do that the right way. But it seems like from top to bottom, the way this has been handled from UCF for you and Nebraska, it has been done the first-class way and making sure everybody's taken care of. I loved the photo that UCF put out of you with your teammates, or your players, rather, after the game saying we sent him out a winner. How important was it for you to make sure that process was respected on both sides here?
It was really important, and what I was going to make sure I did was do things the right way. My priority was the players there. We tried to keep it all off their plate as much as we could to try to help them win games. The coaches remained focused on the games we had to win down there, and we did a good job finishing the season. My next priority was to make sure that the staff was taken care of, and I gave them all an opportunity to decide whether they wanted to come here with me or not. I watched a lot of other coaches take the next step and get jobs, and they leave people behind, and they say, you were good enough to help me win there, but you're not good enough to help me win at my next one. And like I said, my priority was the players first, and then making sure that my staff that helped us be 12-0 was taken care of.
Scott Frost, a new coach at Alabama, joining us now. He's your Home Depot Coach of the Year.
Alabama?
I'm sorry, no, I say Alabama. My fault. Wow.
Scott, just so you know, he's had a rough morning. He also referred to our show as Mike and Mike. So it's not just you. I want you to know that.
That's still weighing on my mind. You are certainly not coaching at Alabama. Some guy named Saban is probably going to be there for a little while. So Scott Frost going to his alma mater in Nebraska. What did you say, and how difficult was it when you did tell the team? I mean, we know all the report. We saw how it went. The reports were out there. Todd McShay asked you on the field and such. But when you finally had a chance to talk to your team of how difficult that was.
Well, it was one of the most difficult things I've ever done, Mike. And it was a tough decision. I had such a good relationship with UCF and the players there. My wife loved it there. We liked living in Orlando. It really was a tough decision. And when I finally made the decision, it was the week of that championship game, and we tried to keep the players focused and the coaches focused, and decided the best way to tell the team was after the game. So we won the game and celebrated, and I called the team back in to the team meeting room about an hour and a half later and cried when I told them, and then had a bunch of people, a line of players come in and thank me and tell me goodbye, and that was difficult. That's a special group of kids. You don't go from 0-12 to 12-0 unless you have a special group of human beings, and those guys will be one of my favorite teams as long as I live.
Scott Frost with us here, the new Nebraska head coach. You won the Home Depot Coach of the Year, and by the way, got major raves for your shoe wear.
Yeah, the Yeezys. How about that?
Well done. A lot of people took notice of that, so tip of the cap to you on that one. But Scott, I just want to be clear: is it locked in stone that you will be coaching UCF in the Peach Bowl, or is that still something that's being negotiated?
No, we want to do it. We just got to make sure that both sides are okay with it and we can work it out. You know, it's it's touchy, and there's no good way to break up. A lot of our staff is up here in Nebraska recruiting already, and our kids are down there, and they're hiring new staff, and there's new people in my office, and we just got to make sure all those things are worked out. Got to make sure UCF honors their commitment to take care of my assistants with the bonuses they've earned, and that they're being compensated for it. And there's a lot of things to work out, but our heart is with those kids, and those kids deserve the best chance they can possibly have to play well against Auburn, and I think that's with us going back to coach them.
Yeah, let's. I was going to say that's a decision I'm sure that's going to have to be made pretty soon. We heard Nick Saban talking about with Jeremy Pruitt, their coordinator that's going on to coach at Tennessee, about kind of doing both. And sometimes, Scott, they say when you try and do both, you're not doing either, instead of just kind of concentrating on one. So as far as like a decision on that, and the best interest of the players, I'm sure, as you would agree, needs to be first and foremost here. So when do you think all that will be ironed out?
I think today, tomorrow, this weekend. Right now, our plan as a staff is to go back down and have practices this week. Regardless of what happened, we would have taken 1 week off. UCF's players played 12 straight weeks because of the hurricane early in the year and losing our bye week, so they needed some time off. And our plan for a New Year's Bowl would have been to practice 3 times this next week, and that's what we intend to do right now.
So now you go back home to Nebraska, where you won a national championship in '97. Actually beat Peyton Manning in Tennessee. You smoked them in the Orange Bowl that year. I think it was 42-17. So you go back there. So what will be the first order of business to talk to a team there that was 4-8 last year and looking to really get back to what they were?
There's a lot of messages I want to send to them. The first is we're going to have fun, but we're not going to get there without a lot of hard work and effort. And I think we managed to do that at UCF while enjoying being around each other and having as much fun as anybody in college football. I don't want to make it about me. I don't want to make it about the past. It's about these kids, and it's about the here and now. But I want our players to know there are standards at Nebraska that we're going to expect and the people here expect. We're going to have a tough team. We're going to have a physical team. We're going to work harder than anybody else on the field and in the weight room. And we're going to have a lot of fun doing it. And those are the kind of things that the people in Nebraska stand for and the program stood for when I was here. And like I said, it's about these kids in the here and now, but those things are never going to change.
Certainly got to be going to be, I would imagine, a lot of fun to go back and coach your alma mater where you had such success. So this brings me to my question. What were you most excited about? Winning the national championship in Nebraska, going 13-0, winning that last game against Memphis, winning the conference, going 13-0, or knowing that you're a huge Cubs fan when the Cubs won the World Series?
Oh, man, that's tough. Actually, one of the Ricketts brothers called me this year during the season, and that was a thrill for me, too, being a Cubs fan. But you mentioned all those 3 things, Mike. I had my first son a little over a month ago, and I know you're getting to work with your son now, and the most special thing that could ever happen to a guy. So as good a year as this has been, that's definitely the highlight.
I would imagine so. Just wait till he gets to be 28 and doesn't listen to you anymore like mine does. That sits next to me in the show. Then you may have a different thought.
Hey.
That's obvious watching the show. Yeah.
Hey, Scott, if you make it to 28 and he's not listening to you, that's a win. Mine stopped at like 14. Normally there will be a time.
Good to know.
Just tell it. There's a time where they hang on every word you say, and they think that you know everything. And then when they start to get a little older, they suddenly think, you don't know anything.
You know what? It's kind of like freshman year to senior year, what they're going to think of you, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Well, Scott, we appreciate you getting up early with us. Congratulations on a great season and the award for Coach of the Year, and best of luck at your alma mater in Nebraska.
I appreciate that, guys. Love the show. Keep doing what you do.
This has been the Best of Golic and Wingo podcast. Make sure to subscribe on the ESPN app, Apple Podcasts, and to listen every weekday morning at 6 Eastern on ESPN Radio, ESPN2, and the ESPN app.